Okay, I'd like to call the continuation of the November 1st, was it, meeting to
Right.
order. It's now 5:32. We're meeting remotely due to caution over COVID. Um, and I believe because of that, we need a roll call vote. Mr. Smith, can you do that?
Roll call for attendance, Manager Crafton, Manager Duval,
Present.
Manager Cook.
You're
Sorry,
on,
you're Manager Cook.
you're on mute, Manager Cook.
Sorry about that, President.
Manager Pedersen,
Present.
President Siegler.
Present.
We have 4 managers present, Manager Crafton absent.
As I recall, the only things that remained on the agenda were the Spring Road Conservation Project and authorizing president or administrator to execute with advice of legal counsel the engagement letter to Northland Securities. Is that correct?
That is my recollection. Yes, we continued to table that item, continued it to this meeting.
Mr. President,
Okay.
I can review kind of what we distributed if that would be useful.
Yes.
Um, as Mr. Eilertson had described, really 2 possible arrangements. One was as a placement agent, the other was a municipal advisor. The thrust of the board discussion, I think, clearly pointed toward a municipal advisor role. I worked to take our standard professional services agreement and adapt it as appropriate to this circumstance, and then attach as an exhibit the municipal advisor agreement that Northland Securities prepared, so that all of their language that they need for their purposes was inserted in that way. I think with that, the arrangement should be clear. The duty of Northland is a fiduciary duty to the district is clear. I think Mr. Allinson's here and available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, should we get a motion, or maybe I'll make the motion to adopt resolution 23-071? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on this item?
Yes, Mr. President. Can you hear me?
Yes, Manager Cook, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I have a couple of questions. So first question is, what is the last day to terminate the agreement with Trek without any liability?
Unless you know it off the top of your head, Lewis, I can look up the agreement.
Yeah, I believe it's the 60-day feasibility period, but it may be that the period to close would go further, but I think it's essentially the 60-day feasibility period.
That was my recollection, President Ziegler. Managers was, 60 days with a 30-day option.
So my follow-up question to that is, what date was it signed by both of the parties?
Let me pull that up.
Recollection is October 11th, but Terry has it handy.
So I have a follow-up questions here. So it would be October 11th, December 11th. So I have a question for Mr. Is it Ellertson? Am I pronouncing it correct?
Eilertson, I'll answer to both, but Eilertson.
Just say it again. I mean, everybody pronounces my name differently, and I really don't care, but I do
Sure.
care that other people care.
Yep, it's really without the E at the beginning, so Eilertson.
Eilertson. Okay, thank you very much. gone through that my life period. So the question is what is the likelihood of closing on a funding transaction before December 11th? Well, I may be off one day because October is 31 days, but do you have a guesstimate on that or opinion on that?
President Ziegler and managers, December 11th is something that we can report back to you on. The preliminary timeline that I was working with was having a financing for your December 6th meeting, that you would have a resolution to award the financing at that date. A quick turnaround on a closing by December 11th. I would say comfortably that we will have a closing by the end of the calendar year, but by December 11th might be a little bit on the aggressive side.
Okay, thank you for that comment. So, on that basis, I don't think, my view is, and I submitted a proposed resolution to Administrator Jeffrey. I don't know if you want to put it on the screen, but you don't have to. I mean, I'll summarize it. My motion, which would be to basically table this motion and to terminate the agreement with the sellers and the owners, given the fact that we will not be able to meet the 60-day requirement. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is to extend it would require additional funds that would not be refundable. But, if I'm mistaken on that, please let me know. And so does anybody have an answer to that question before I continue?
Mr. President.
Mr. Smith.
So the feasibility period is for investigating financing and also the board's regulatory approval process, which by which we mean the plan amendment and the ordering process. And then from there's an additional 30 days to close. So Mr. Eilertson's timetable of identifying financing for our December 2nd meeting and then being able to close within 30 days after that into January would meet the timetable for that purpose.
Well, Mr. President, I'm going to continue here on this line of questioning. Once the 60 days runs out, we basically have no outs, if I understand it. And we just have 30 days to close. I don't, tell me if I'm wrong. I don't know if there's are there other contingencies that would have to be met before we'd be obligated?
Mr. President, there would be a further extension opportunity for which there would be an additional payment.
So based on that, again, my proposal is we terminate this agreement before we have any liability. We can always continue negotiating, but I see no reason to lock into an additional amount of money. I think it was, I don't know, $50,000 or some number like that. I don't have the agreement in front of me, which reminds me, I've requested a signed copy of the agreement and correspondence on communicating that agreement. I don't believe I've received that yet, so I just want to make sure that I ultimately get that. And the reason I think we stopped at one, for the money part. Number two, when we the district, started down this road on that basis, and I had met with two people who, in some way, shape, or form, were involved with Friends of, is it Spring Valley? I mean, we were assured, or I was assured, that financing was all lined up, and that all they needed was I think the word was a sponsor or something like to get this financing. Well, none of that has happened this date. And So all the premises upon which we move forward, or at least I certainly move forward with even considering this, have not materialized. And it appears to me that based on statements made at the on November 1st, is that Hennepin County isn't going to be able to come through until likely September, but we have no guarantees of that, no lending commitments. If we do it, I'd like to see those. And so and as I mentioned before, I think it's imprudent to enter into a short-term financing arrangement when we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know if interest rates are going to go up or go down. If they go down, hey, that would be to our benefit. If that was the case, and besides that, we have the legislature meeting. I've been told on the one hand, well, maybe it's too late. I've been told on the other hand that people were just informed there's another $2 billion that possibly being able to be reached with this. And as I said before, when this was brought up, I was saying, if you get the money from some other place, that's fine. But I will repeat it, I cannot see putting this tax burden on the taxpayers within the district, especially since Carver County will get no benefit out of it. And as I said before, I don't go and make decisions based on whether I'm Carver or Hennepin, but this is a situation where nobody has demonstrated the water benefits of acquiring this piece of property. In fact, quite the opposite. It's been demonstrated that, our rules are adequately covered by the permit that was issued to Rachel regarding the development of this property. Now, somebody will probably make the note that I did raise objections to granting that permit, but the reason I had the objection to the permit was the fact that I did not believe that appropriate attention had been given to Dr. Strack's concerns regarding land stabilization if this development was built, and nonetheless the remaining managers approved authorizing this development. So it seems to me that we'd be hard pressed to argue that this needed to be acquired. And my understanding of the law is that we don't go out and acquire land unless it's necessary. And based upon what I just said, I fail to see where this is necessary. So, and I'll just, for the record, include all the rest of my comments that I've made at the last meeting and prior meetings, et cetera. But I think at this point we should be terminating the agreement. If people want to go in and try to negotiate a new agreement, I definitely, consider that. But I think we should be looking at funding from other sources. And I'll mention that I don't know how many, but I've at least gotten 24 emails from people saying, thank you for agreeing to buy this property. Well, it seems to me that maybe we need them to all write their legislators and get that funding from the legislature as opposed to putting it on a burden. Or I believe I'm correct, we can have a special tax district, and we can make the Noble Hills a special tax district, and we can put a tax on the people who are in Hennepin County or who want to support this project. But as I see it, it is not necessary. And I'll also add that since no other conservation groups have stepped forward, I think that has to tell us something about the priorities. And we are not, as I read the statute, we are not in the park and rec business. We are in the water business. And for the reasons I've stated, this is not a necessary acquisition. So I would like to look at engaging Mr. Eilertson, if it's appropriate, to go find other permanent financing rather than some one-year financing, given that we don't know what's going to happen, in the future. And So I would move to amend the motion, basically, one, to eliminate all of the self-serving language about why this is being done and simply have the resolution engaging Mr. Eilertson to come back and report to us financing that would be available, be it temporary or permanent, and that in the meantime, we terminate the agreement so we are not any dollars, and we can always come and revisit this. And then some people will probably say, well, this is once in a lifetime. We don't do it. We can't, it's not going to happen. Well, I have the conversation I mentioned before. We do have condemnation powers. So if we think it's that important, we can go condemn it. And I think it would be hard pressed for the condemnation award to be much more than, the appraised valuation, and given the fact that the seller and those parties have agreed to something less than the appraised value. So I see, as I said before, I see no hurry in doing this. We're in control. This property, in my opinion, is unlikely to be developed within the next 12 months, just due to interest rates. I have no idea when interest rates, if they'll come down or when they'll come down. And I have no idea what the financing market's going to be in 12 months. And I don't believe that we should be making that risk. And my motion to amend is to engage Mr. Eilertson to go and find financing options if that's what he's willing to do as a municipal advisor. And
Okay, we have a motion. You're repeating yourself, so we don't need to have you continue to repeat yourself. We have a
President Ziegler,
Manager Cook.
I don't think you're in a position to interrupt me under. Do that.
Call the question. I believe we have a motion that
you
does
cannot
have a
call the
second.
question. You cannot call a question when I have the floor. Okay.
Yeah,
So please.
I just did.
No, well, it's not legal. Okay. It's
Okay,
not
you're
within
rambling.
rules.
You're repeating yourself. You've made a motion. You've made.
Well, thank you for making my case.
But there's no.
Thank you for making my
second to
case.
your motion, and we've been listening to your motion for 15 minutes.
I have been giving the basis and responding to the motion that's on the table. You just continue. I mean, I always like to have people who give me other reasons to object to actions being taken, but please continue, President Ziegler.
We have a motion to amend the motion. Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion fails for lack of a second. We have a motion on the table with a second. That's resolution 23-071. Is there any more questions or comments by other managers before we vote on this?
Well, Mrs.
Manager Cook?
I don't believe that resolution conforms with been proposed by legal counsel, and I'll also add, with respect to this agreement, that does not correlate and is not integrated in the way in which it should be. So these two agreements, I wouldn't vote for this anyway, because the way the agreements are drafted, they're not interrelated, and therefore I don't know which provision applies, and your resolution is incorrect in any event.
The resolution was rewritten. We just got a letter or an email from Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith explained the changes. Do any of the other managers have any questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
On resolution 23-071 as revised.
Manager Crafton is joining us. I don't know if we want to fill her in or.
What do you do with me?
So we have a motion and a second on resolution 23-071. Mr. Smith can briefly explain how it's changed from our last meeting and discussion.
Unfortunately, he froze.
Oh,
Um,
Manager Crafton, did you receive the email that Mr.
Yeah.
Smith sent?
I did.
Do you have any questions on the resolution?
No.
Give him a moment. It looks like he disconnected and is trying to reconnect.
Okay.
Jerry, when we're done with this, would you give me a call?
You asked Terry? Oh,
Yes.
he's nodding his head. Okay.
Sorry, I was late. There was a strategic planning meeting with Bowser and went late.
Yeah, you informed us that that was a risk getting home.
Yeah, I was in Egan, so.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
I just have one comment. Mr. Eilertson, I'm assuming that you're going to do your best in order to meet our time deadline that we have without us possibly incurring some extra dollars. Am I correct? You're on mute.
President Ziegler, managers, yes, we will do our best. And I was contemplating chiming in during a previous conversation about the December 11th date. And I did have a conversation with one bank. I didn't want to get out ahead of certainly being retained by the district. But at this, as we're approaching year end, we can work and work towards a December 10th or 11th closing date. I apologize. I was not aware of the circumstance of the December 11th deadline that you had. So, but that is something that we can speed up the process and still get you a good financing. So,
Great. Thank you.
yes.
President Ziegler,
Yes.
I do have Mr. Lewis or Mr. Smith on the phone. If you want him to give a brief synopsis of the resolution, or I could just continue with the roll call vote. It's to you.
Manager Crafton, do you need the repeat of the synopsis, or can we go to the roll call vote?
Let's just go to the roll call vote.
All right, Lewis, I'll get it. Okay, on the motion to adopt resolution 23-071, Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
No.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
and President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1 to adopt resolution 23-071.
So I believe that was the other item was to authorize the president or administrator to execute with advice of legal counsel the engagement letter with Northland Securities.
Which is included within the resolution, that language.
Okay. So is there anything else we need to talk about now, or are we?
President Ziegler, that was what the continuation was to address.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
I forget, since I don't have a copy of the minutes, which I don't necessarily expect, of course. But did we cover all the manager reports?
My recollection, we did cover.
Correct.
Well, I've submitted a report, so ask that be included with the minutes of this agreement, which basically repeat, what I stated before, if I recall exactly what I stated before. There are a number of items. And just for the record, I'll note that today's meeting is another of the apparently continuing violations of the open meeting law by this Board of Managers. And also note that there has been continuing failure to comply with data requests pursuant to the Minnesota Data Practices Act.
Okay, that's it?
That's all I have to say right now.
Okay, I kind of have a question for Administrator Jeffrey. If we ask Northland Securities to look for both short-term and long-term, just so if we end up in a crunch at the end and we're not sure what the interest rate's doing, if they can give us two options.
Oh, that
I
is
can work with Mr. Eilertson. I think I believe that
so.
would be within his bailiwick. I'll check with legal to make sure that that would fall within this resolution. So those are the two outstanding questions: is if Northland can do it, and if it is allowed under this resolution as drafted.
Okay,
Is it Mr. President?
Manager Cook?
I just have a question about the status. Are we going to be having in-person workshop, or what is the status? I don't believe
Thank you.
that was addressed at the last meeting.
Yeah, thank you for the reminder. Yeah, I said we were going to be meeting and working on it today. We got closer, but I would not bet too much of my savings on being able to hold it in person on the 16th. So I think discretion would say shoot for the first meeting in December.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I believe that would be a unanimous consent item. Do we have any managers that don't believe it makes sense to have staff test everything before we have our first regular meeting that's hybrid?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I believe that's what I proposed several meetings ago, that we have some means of testing, make sure everything works before we end up showing up and not being able to conduct a meeting so that people can participate or at least listen via Zoom.
So this would be agreeing to go to the December 1st meeting. Is it?
Well, Mr. President, I don't believe we ever stated or approved or passed any resolution to say we are having in person on November, is it 16th?
16th.
Would be the next one. So I don't know that anything needs to be done, but I'll leave that to you.
President Ziegler?
Yes.
Manager Cook's recollection is correct. We said let's shoot for the 16th to have an in-person meeting, but there was no resolution stating that that would be the date. It was contingent upon the system working. And that's what the managers wanted, was for the system to be working, tested, and then have the meeting in person.
Mr. President,
Yes.
on my calendar, I have December 13th. Is that the next regular meeting?
Yes.
Or do we have a December 1st meeting?
No, December 13th.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
President Ziegler, I move we adjourn the meeting.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any more comments or questions before we vote? Hearing none, Administrator Jeffrey, can you do a roll call vote, please?
On the motion to adjourn, Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
5-0. Thank you, everyone. George, I will get in touch with you tomorrow.
I'll give you a call, Terry.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.